So, what if the way you cross the letter T on a hurried grocery list could actually tell a doctor you're developing Parkinson's disease?
Right. Or what if the exact spot where you absent-mindedly doodle on a notepad could help the FBI solve a kidnapping?
I mean, it completely reframes how we think about leaving a trace, doesn't it? Because usually when we think of physical evidence, we think of, a fingerprint on a glass.
Exactly. But a fingerprint is just a static, dead image. It's a geometric stamp. It doesn't tell you the person was terrified or exhausted or sick when they touched that glass.
Right. But a handwritten note is entirely different. When you look at ink on a page, you aren't looking at a static shape. You are looking at a live feed. So, welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here for this one.
Today, we have a mission for you. We are unpacking this massive stack of research, ranging from forensic graphology manuals and a 1956 FBI case file to clinical medical studies and forensic psychology reports.
Yeah, and the goal is to discover the hidden truths buried right there in our handwriting and drawings. The premise we are exploring today is just profound.
It really is.
We're looking at how the simple act of putting pen to paper leaves this undeniable biological printout of your identity, your emotional state, and your physical health.
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we can understand how ink solves crimes or diagnoses illnesses, we really need to establish a baseline. What is the fundamental rule of handwriting that makes all of this forensic and psychological analysis even possible?
Well, it begins with what forensic experts call Solange Pellet's first law of handwriting. And it kind of completely shifts how you think about the physical act of writing.
Because intuitively, it just feels like moving a stick across a page, right?
It does feel that way, yeah. But the law states simply that the brain is what writes, not the hand.
Wait, I need a second on that. The brain writes.
Exactly. Writing is fundamentally a neurophysiological act. The hand is just the instrument holding the ink.
Oh.
The actual commands, the ones dictating the specific loops, the exact amount of pressure, the microscopic spacing between letters, those all originate in the motor cortex of the central nervous system.
So it's not about hand muscles at all, really.
Right. And there's a remarkable medical reality that proves this. If a person tragically loses their arms and has to learn to write with their foot, or say by holding a pen in their mouth,
Yeah.
the final script will actually bear the exact same structural characteristics as their old handwriting.
That is wild to think about. The exact same.
Yes, I mean, it takes time to build the muscle control, of course, but once they do, the spacing, the proportions, the foundational architecture of the letters, they're identical.
So the brain is essentially the software sending the print job. And whether you use your right hand, your left hand, or your foot, those are just different printers.
That's a great analogy.
They might have different ink cartridges, but the documents code, the actual layout and formatting is exactly the same because the software didn't change.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. The commands are traveling down a different nerve pathway, but the blueprint is identical.
Which is just mind-blowing.
It is. And that leads right into Jean Gay's law of individuality, which dictates that no two writings are identical. Because every human brain is structurally and chemically unique, every resulting script is unique.
Like a fingerprint.
Much like a fingerprint, but infinitely more complex because it involves movement and time. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this biological truth forms the absolute foundation for the entire field of graphistics.
And graphistics is like forensic handwriting analysis. Right?
Exactly. Graphistics and graphopsychology. You literally cannot fake who you are on paper because you cannot fake your own central nervous system.
I love that concept, and it makes total sense when you think about it, which brings up an incredibly high-stakes scenario.
Oh, definitely.
If writing is controlled by this deeply ingrained subconscious neural pathway, trying to actively override it has to be exhausting. Like if you were to sit down right now and try to forge your boss's signature.
Or write a ransom note in a totally different handwriting.
Right, you're basically fighting your own brain.
You are fighting years, maybe decades, of deeply entrenched neural pathways. And it's not just mentally exhausting, it actually leaves undeniable physical evidence on the page.
Okay, how so?
This is governed by Pellet's second and third laws, known as the action of the eye and the mark of effort. When you sit down to fake a handwriting style, you use intense conscious effort at the very beginning of the word or the signature.
Right, I'm staring at the pen, telling myself, like, make it blocky, make it slanted.
Yes, you are highly focused on making that first capital letter look different. But the human brain is incredibly efficient.
Yeah.
It hates expending conscious energy if it doesn't have to.
So it just gets tired.
Exactly. So by the time you get to the middle or the end of the word, your conscious focus slips. The subconscious mind takes over, putting you on autopilot.
So you slip back into your own handwriting.
Right. It is functionally impossible to fake handwriting for any sustained period without leaving what Pellet calls a mark of effort.
What does a mark of effort actually look like under a microscope?
They are microstutters, tiny, unnatural stops where the pen rested for a fraction of a second while the conscious mind tried to remember the fake style.
Oh, wow.
They show up as unnatural hooks, slight tremors, or sudden deviations in slant, where the conscious mind basically fought against the subconscious baseline and lost.
And that exact biological reality is what cracked the 1956 Peter Weinberger kidnapping in New York, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
This case is just heartbreaking, but from an investigative standpoint, it is a masterclass in this exact science. A 1-month-old baby, Peter, was taken from his stroller on the patio of his home in Long Island.
And the only thing the kidnapper left behind was a handwritten ransom note.
Right. A note written in green ink demanding $2,000 and chillingly signed, "Your babysitter."
And back in 1956, there was a federal law that mandated the FBI had to wait 7 full days before they could intervene in a kidnapping case.
Which is insane to think about now.
It was a jurisdictional thing, a law that President Eisenhower actually changed specifically because of the tragedy of this case. But once those 7 agonizing days passed, the FBI moved in.
And they had absolutely nothing to go on. No witnesses, no fingerprints, no suspect profile. Just the green ink in that ransom note and a second note the kidnapper left at a drop site.
So the FBI's handwriting experts had to rely entirely on the premise we just discussed, that this kidnapper, despite trying to disguise his handwriting to avoid getting caught, could not hide his unconscious graphical traits.
The marks of effort.
Exactly. The marks of effort and the baseline neural blueprint were there. But here is the monumental challenge. How do you find a match in 1956 without a computer database?
You do it by hand.
Yes.
And that's exactly what they did. They went to the New York probation offices, the motor vehicle registries, the tax records, federal housing forms. They manually pulled files one by one.
They analyzed 2 million individual handwriting samples.
Try
to fathom the scale of that manual labor. Room after room of agents looking at the specific slant of a lowercase e, the distinct way a tie was crossed, the exact spacing between words.
2 million samples. And because of the laws of handwriting, because those unconscious traits always leak out past the disguise, they finally found a match.
A man named Angelo Lamarca.
Yeah. He was a bootlegger who was heavily in debt and desperate for cash. The FBI brought him in, showed him the incontrovertible handwriting match from his public records compared to the ransom note, and he confessed.
Tragically, he had abandoned the baby in the woods days earlier and they didn't find Peter in time.
Which is just awful. But it was the microscopic movements of ink on that page that ultimately brought the kidnapper to justice.
Absolutely.
But wait, I have to push back here, just thinking about the mechanics of this. Couldn't someone just write with their opposite hand?
It's a common thought, yeah.
Or like if they know they're writing a ransom note, couldn't they just deliberately make their writing look really, really worse to throw the cops off entirely?
It's a very common assumption, but forensic graphology addresses this directly through the rules of what they call the culture of graphology.
The culture of graphology.
Right. It essentially deals with the limits of human motor skills. First, consider someone with a low writing skill, someone who naturally has an unorganized, slow, or clumsy script.
Okay, like a messy writer.
They simply cannot imitate high-quality, elegant, fast-paced writing. The brain hasn't built those complex neural pathways.
That makes sense.
It's like asking someone who just learned to play chopsticks to fake a Mozart sonata. They physically can't do it.
Okay, but what about the reverse? A highly skilled writer faking a messy, low-skill script.
That's where they hit what experts call a space-time limit. Yes, a skilled writer can purposefully write terribly, but cognitive fatigue sets in remarkably fast.
Because they have to think about it so much.
Exactly. If they write long enough, say a full paragraph for a ransom note, the conscious effort to be messy fails. They will inevitably revert to their own subconscious baseline. The hidden structural elements, how they connect a vowel to a consonant, the pressure they apply in a downward stroke, those will always bleed through the disguise.
So the ink betrays our identity no matter how hard we try to hide it. But what really blew my mind reading through all this research is that the ink goes way beyond just identity.
Oh, absolutely.
It also betrays our physiological and psychological state. If the subconscious mind forces its way onto the page to reveal our true identity when we're trying to hide it,
Right.
what happens when the subconscious tries to reveal things we don't even know about ourselves, like a hidden sickness?
This is exactly where forensic graphology intersects with clinical medicine. There was a fascinating blind controlled study done in 2007 published in the International Journal of Clinical Practice.
I remember reading about this one.
Yeah, the researchers wanted to see if a graphologist could detect suicidal risk purely through the mechanics of handwriting.
And it was a double-blind study, so the analysts had absolutely no idea who wrote what or even what the study was specifically looking for initially.
Correct. They took letters written by 40 healthy volunteers and 40 letters written by patients who had recently recovered from suicide attempts.
Okay.
Now, to make sure the analysts weren't just reading into the actual words being said, all 80 participants were asked to write a short text about a childhood memory, a completely neutral topic, totally unrelated to mental health.
And didn't they even throw out any letters that overtly expressed sadness?
Yes, they did, to ensure the analysts weren't just picking up on obvious context clues.
So they were forced to look purely at the physical ink on the page. The spacing, the pressure, the baseline, and the results are staggering.
They really are.
The graphologists correctly identified the suicide risk with 73% sensitivity and 88% specificity. The study concluded this was massively, significantly better than random chance.
What's happening mechanically is that the physical body, under extreme emotional or psychological duress, alters its motor output. Extreme depression often shows up as a loss of vital energy in the script.
Like what specifically?
Descending baselines, fading pressure, a literal trailing off of the ink. But it's not just psychological. Specific medications and physical diseases alter handwriting in highly predictable ways.
Yeah, the physical side is crazy.
For instance, lithium or common asthma medications like albuterol create highly specific microtremors in the hand.
And neurodegenerative diseases.
That's exactly. Conditions like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's cause distinct disorganization in the script long before other physical symptoms might be obvious to a layman.
That is just incredible.
With Parkinson's, you often see micrographia, where the handwriting gets progressively smaller and more cramped as the person writes across the page because the brain is struggling to scale the motor movements.
It's almost like a seismograph for the human body. Think about how a seismograph records every tiny vibration in the earth.
That's exactly what it is.
The pen is doing the exact same thing for your nervous system, recording every internal tremor, whether that tremor is profound emotional distress or a chemical imbalance.
A physical printout.
But I have to ask for a point of clarification here, just so we're clear. Can a graphologist actually look at my handwriting and diagnose me with Parkinson's?
That is a crucial, non-negotiable boundary in the field. The answer is a definitive no. Graphology never diagnoses.
All right.
It is not a medical practice, and it doesn't replace a doctor. What it does is point out pathological tendencies. It acts as an early warning system.
So it's a clue.
Exactly.
Yeah?
If a graphologist sees those specific microtremors or micrographia, they flag it as a complementary tool to assist medical professionals, essentially saying there is a neurological anomaly happening here. You might want to run some clinical tests.
That makes total sense. It's an indicator, not a final verdict. Now, I want to pivot my tone here slightly because the material we need to cover next is heavy, but it is deeply vital to understanding just how powerful this tool is.
It's an important pivot, yeah.
We've talked about adults whose handwriting changes under stress. But what about when individuals lack the vocabulary to express their psychological state at all, specifically young children?
Right.
When a child experiences severe trauma, how does the brain's seismograph output the truth when they can't write a letter about it?
It maps the trauma onto the page through spatial symbolism and drawings. The forensic graphologist Maria Delia Bellmeyer has done extensive work on this.
And how does that work exactly?
To understand it, you have to understand the psychology of spatial zones on a blank piece of paper. In Western cultures, we read and write from left to right. Therefore, unconsciously, the left side of the page represents the past. It's where we start.
Right, it's the origin point.
Exactly. The right side represents the future, where we are going, and our contact with others.
Okay, what about top and bottom?
The top of the page represents the head, ideas, and spirituality.
Yeah.
The bottom represents the physical body, the ground, and our base instincts.
So the blank page is essentially a map of the human psyche.
Yes, it is.
And when a child experiences severe trauma, that trauma literally maps itself onto those spatial zones. There is a heartbreaking case file regarding an 8-year-old girl named Saul. She was a victim of severe abuse. And in a drawing she made for analysts, she placed a massive, dark, phallic symbol completely blocking the right margin of the page.
She was literally putting up a wall on the right side of the paper, completely blocking her future and blocking her contact with the outside world.
Yes. She also drew crossed-out hearts, and she wrote a highly deformed letter R. According to the psychological analysis, the letter R involves a strong downward stroke followed by an outward expansive movement.
Which symbolizes vital energy and pushing forward.
Exactly, but hers was deformed and cramped, literally showing her vital energy being blocked.
Right.
And then there was Elena, a 5-year-old. She drew a human figure with almost no torso.
Which demonstrates a profound traumatic disconnect from her own physical self.
Exactly. The figure had hurt hands drawn aggressively or covered up, which symbolizes deep guilt and an inability to reach out for help.
It's just devastating to see.
She drew crossed-out ears because she literally didn't want to hear what was happening to her. And bizarrely drawn, emphasized feet, which carry an instinctive sexual symbolism in that spatial zone.
And the forensic analysts also look at the literal mechanics of the crayon or pen strokes in these drawings.
Like the pressure.
Exactly. Heavy, aggressive ink pressure isn't just a stylistic choice. It represents blood rushing to the brain, high physical tension, and suppressed anger.
Wow.
They look for massive omissions, like leaving out faces or limbs entirely, and heavily shaded or frantically scribbled genital areas.
I have to play devil's advocate for a second, though, because I'm sure people are wondering this.
Sure.
If a kid is just pressing really hard with a crayon or scribbling heavily because they're just an energetic kid making a mess on a Tuesday afternoon, how does an expert know it's a sign of horrific trauma and not just a kid being a kid?
It's an excellent question, and it's really the difference between amateur guesswork and forensic science. The experts never look at just one isolated sign. They are looking for clusters of specific anomalies. Heavy pressure alone might just be an energetic child.
Right.
But heavy pressure, combined with spatial blocking of the future, combined with the severe omission of hands, combined with a deformed representation of vital energy, that specific cluster forms a statistical pattern that practically screams of trauma.
So it's the combination of red flags.
Exactly.
Right.
The paper becomes a silent witness when the child physically cannot speak the words.
It is incredible how the subconscious mind always finds a way to scream for help. It really is. So, with all this deep subconscious weight attached to pen and paper, from trauma mapping to disease tremors to criminal guilt, how is this science actually applied in the modern professional world today?
Because I imagine, going back to the FBI, they aren't just sitting in rooms with magnifying glasses pulling 2 million paper files anymore.
Right. I hope not.
Far from it. The field has digitized significantly, allowing for a level of microscopic precision that wasn't possible in 1956. We looked at the work of Manel de Vicente.
The software developer, right?
Yes, he built specialized tools for forensic calligraphers.
Hmm.
He developed a program called NEGE, which stands for a digital negatoscope.
Let's clarify that for a layman. What does a digital negatoscope actually do?
Think of it as a highly advanced digital lightbox. It allows an analyst to overlay 2 signatures on a screen, but it doesn't just look at the shape.
What else is a little bit?
It measures the microscopic pressure points, the exact velocity of the pen stroke, and the angles of the curves down to the millimeter.
And they also use a tool called XHFDE, right? Which I have to say sounds like a secret weapon.
It essentially is a predictive modeling weapon. It features a stroke generator that maps the trajectory of a person's writing.
Okay, mapping the trajectory.
What's incredible is that it can actually simulate how a specific signature will degrade over time if the writer develops Alzheimer's or Parkinson's.
Wait, really? It predicts the future of your handwriting?
Yes. It takes the baseline neuromotor function and models the neurological decay, showing exactly what that signature will look like 5 years from now.
That is mind-blowing.
But even with all this advanced tech, de Vicente talked about his constant frustration with what he calls the CSI effect.
Yes, the Hollywood expectation versus reality.
He gets incredibly frustrated because people, sometimes even police investigators, ask his software to magically invent data from blurry, low-resolution photographs.
Right, like enhance that smudge.
Exactly. They watch TV and think you can click an enhance button and see the reflection of the kidnapper in a drop of ink.
Which is impossible.
He constantly has to remind them that if the data points, the pressure, the velocity aren't physically captured in the digital image, the software cannot magically invent them. Real life has limits.
Real life definitely has limits, but stepping away from crime scenes and medical clinics, there is an everyday application of graphology that really surprised me.
Oh, the corporate side.
Yes, it's happening right now in the corporate world, specifically in France. Between 50 to 75% of French companies use graphology as a supplementary tool in their human resources departments to evaluate job candidates.
It is deeply embedded in their corporate culture, and it's highly regulated there.
Regulated how?
There's a central society, the SFTG, which ensures that French graphologists all pass rigorous, standardized exams before they can consult for a business.
But I have to admit, as a job applicant, that feels incredibly vulnerable. I understand the science, but is it really fair that a company might pass on hiring me because the spatial layout of my cover letter tells them I'm disorganized? Or because my lowercase g suggests I'm bad at teamwork?
This raises an important question about how we apply this science, and the French professionals address this head-on.
Okay, what's their defense?
Just like in the medical field where it cannot diagnose, in the corporate world, it is strictly used as a complementary tool. A company doesn't blindly hire or fire solely based on a handwriting sample.
So they use it alongside other things.
Exactly. They use it to explore traits that they have already seen in the interview process or on the CV.
So how does that actually play out in an interview setting?
Say you're applying for a project management role. In the interview, you claim to be highly organized, meticulous, and great at long-term planning.
Standard interview answers.
Right. But the graphologist looks at your handwriting sample and sees that your spatial layout is entirely chaotic, your margins are erratic, and your baseline is all over the place.
Uh-oh.
The graphologist doesn't say, don't hire them. They flag it for the interviewer and say, there is a severe disconnect between their outward claim and their baseline motor output. You need to probe deeper into their actual organizational skills.
All right, that makes it a piece of the puzzle, not the whole picture.
Yeah.
But still, why use handwriting over a standard personality test?
Because of the social desirability bias.
The what?
As one French executive noted, two entirely different people, one a great worker, one terrible, can easily fake their way to the exact same result on a multiple-choice personality test.
Right, they just click the answers they know the company wants to hear.
Exactly. But as we established with the laws of handwriting, no two people can fake the same handwriting. You cannot lie to the paper because you cannot fundamentally alter your central nervous system on command.
It cuts straight through the bias.
It does.
It cuts right to the involuntary truth. We've covered a massive amount of ground today, so let's tie this all together for you listening.
It's a lot to process, for sure.
The main takeaway here is that every single time you jot down a grocery list, or sign a credit card receipt, or absentmindedly doodle during a boring meeting, you aren't just putting ink on a page.
You are leaving a direct biological printout of your central nervous system.
Exactly. You are leaving a highly complex map of your emotional state, your physical health, and your fundamental identity.
It is an involuntary autobiography being written in real time every time you pick up a pen.
Which brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with today. If handwriting is this profound of a diagnostic window into our subconscious minds and our physical health, what is happening to the human psyche right now?
That's the big question.
Because we are rapidly transitioning away from pen and paper in our daily lives, we are almost entirely replacing it with typing on uniform, cold glass screens.
Right.
Every text message you send looks exactly the same in its perfectly rendered font, whether you are overjoyed, terrified, entirely at peace, or desperately sick. If the ink on the page was the most honest mirror we had into our own souls, what happens to us when we stop looking in it?
It certainly seems we are trading a deeply revealing live feed for a static uniform font.
A static smudge on a glass screen. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you and maybe pay just a little more attention the next time you pick up a pen.